Morning, everybody. This is a public meeting to consider the proposed comprehensive official plan and zoning bylaw amendments listed as items 1, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8 on today's agenda. Can I have everyone's attention, please? Thank you. For the items just mentioned, only those who make oral submissions today or written submissions before the amendments are adopted may appeal the matter to the local planning appeal tribunal. In addition, the applicant may appeal the matter to the local planning appeal tribunal if council does not adopt an amendment within 90 days of receipt of the application for zoning and 120 days for an official plan amendment. A comment sheet is available at the door, which I see some of you are taking advantage of, for anyone wishing to submit written comments on these amendments. If anybody has on the committee has any motions they'd like to bring forward on any of the items in advance, that would be great, so that we have a chance to review it, as does the delegations and the applicant.
All good.
Declarations of interest. Confirmation of minutes from the meeting of October 24th, 2019. Carried? Okay. Item number 1 is a deferred item from the last meeting, and we're going to just hang on to it and not have it be first. They're working in the back rooms of Calcutta trying to come up with a negotiated deal. So we'll just hang on to that one. And there's also a technical amendment on that one. On the second one is the stormwater management guidelines for the Pinecrest Creek Westboro area. Vice Chair Tierney has a deferral motion.
Yes, Madam Chair. Therefore, be resolved that the Planning Committee defer the report for the stormwater management guidelines for the Pinecrest Creek / Westboro area. The schedule of Planning Committee meeting the first quarter of 2020.
And Councillor Kavanagh has something to say on the deferral.
Yes, I just wanted to clarify that we'll be able to meet with staff and be able to consult with the public on this, because there's certainly a lot of concern for ecological reasons on the Pinecrest Creek.
Absolutely, and that's why we are deferring it. Take that extra time.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for joining us today. So on the deferral of the stormwater management guidelines for the Pinecrest Creek Westboro area. Carried? And that's not, and often with the deferral, it's like to the next meeting, but this is actually to Q1 2020. The next item is the official plan and zoning bylaw amendments for 89 Richmond Road. We don't have any speakers, do we? Now we have speakers. Where is it? Okay, we're holding that. We have a speaker and the applicant. The next item is the zoning bylaw amendment and plan of subdivision for 21 Withrow Avenue. We have 7 or more speakers on that, so we'll hold that item. Maybe our council sponsors will be here when we get to it. Zoning bylaw amendment for 2159 Mayor Bleu Road. We have a motion from the ward councillor Steve Blake.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Whereas report ACS 2009 or 2019 PI PS 0078 zoning bylaw amendment 2159 Mayor Bleu Road speaks to permit employment uses and recreational and athletic facilities. And whereas 2159 Mayor Bleu is within the East Urban Community Phase 3 Community Design Plan study area, and whereas the Community Design Plan has not yet been approved by Council, therefore be it resolved that the report amend as follows: that the land subject of the report be rezoned from IG7H21 to IG7X H21-H, that the following provisions be added to item 2C of the document 2, details of recommended zoning. The H symbol will not be removed until such time as it can be demonstrated that the lands be serviced for all municipal servicing, including roads, water, and sanitary and storm sewers, and 2, a community design plan for the mixed-use center is approved. Point 3, that text in quotes, "all uses until such time that the holding symbol is removed," end quote, be added to column 4. And be it further resolved that pursuant to the Planning Act subsection 3417, no further notice be given.
Okay, so we have no speakers, but we do have the applicant represented by Jonah Bond and by Julie Carrera. Julie? Okay. You support it? Are you both aware of that? You are? So if we're prepared to carry that and the item, do you still need to speak? Okay. I have to ask you, even though it says that you said that. It's just the law. So, on the amendment, carried, and on the item, on the report, 2159 Maribler Road as amended, carried. Thank you. Thank you for coming. All right, next up, we have the zoning bylaw amendment for 70 Gloucester Street and 89 and 91 Nepean Street. We have 2 people representing the applicant. And that's all. So Ellen Potts and Vincent Dename. Are you Marcel's son? Baby? Oh, okay. I just said baby. I was going to say, hey, that's personal. Okay, so if we're prepared to, I wasn't looking for that kind of reassurance. Just a question. If we're prepared to carry this, do you still need to speak? Okay, perfect. So is this item carried? Thank you. Next item is housing mix in new residential communities. Yep. That's Councillor Gower has asked that we hold that item. The next item is the City of Ottawa zoning bylaw 2008/250 omnibus amendments, Q4 2019. We have no speakers on that, but I do have a motion, technical motion from Vice Chair Tierney. Does anyone have any questions on this one? We'll present the technical motion, please.
Yeah, since it's technical, I'll just read, therefore it be resolved that the following changes be made to the staff report. One, that the planning committee amend the staff report item in regards to 175A Main Street as follows. A, by replacing the text for a minimum of 50% with the text for a minimum of 65%, and B, by replacing the text abutting the lot line with the text facing the front lot line. And be it further resolved that no further notice be provided pursuant to subsection 3417 of the Planning Act.
Okay, does anyone have any questions about that? This is the Greystone in Old Ottawa East. Okay, so on the technical amendment, is it carried? And on the omnibus amendments as amended, carried? Okay, then we have a motion to add an additional item to the agenda, and Vice Chair Tierney, this is at 473 Albert Street. Yeah.
Again, I'll just go directly to the therefore it be resolved that Planning Committee recommend to Council that the application to Committee of Adjustment be permitted with respect to the property at 473 Albert Street for minor variances associated with the proposed development.
It's in the 2 years zoning period, which is why we are being asked to do it. Yep, Catherine knows, everybody knows. I shouldn't say that. Catherine knows, Councillor McKenney knows, yes. You should never assume. Thank you for asking. Okay, so now it's on the agenda. Is the item, well, let's just deal with it. Is it carried? Carried? All right, good. Now, we'll go back to the beginning, and I saw Councillor Eglai. Where did you go? He came in and he left? Pardon? Okay, I'll wait for him to come back then. Just find out whether or not they have a... So we'll go to the next held item, which is official plan and zoning bylaw amendments for 89 Richmond Road. We have a speaker. And the speaker is Amy Murdoch. Amy, are you here?
I'm not sure about the format and whether I'm able to ask questions specifically about it.
No. But you could state what questions you have without asking them. I mean, if you have concerns, I would, come on forward, there's a, see, there, right beside the, I don't know why we have the extra mic, maybe the real mics aren't working. Yeah, see where the red light is? Sit down?
Yeah.
Yeah. You're going to have 5 minutes, and the way this works is you came out today, came down to this place, and you have some concerns about this application. So
Yes.
we're not going to answer your questions. However, if you'd like to say, you know, my concern is with X, Y, and Z, we'd love to hear that.
Okay, excellent. So I have a little bit of knowledge about what is going to transpire specifically with that building. It's going to be a 6-story condo with 2 floors of commercial on the bottom. My concerns are traffic. We're going to have, I'm a resident in the area, and we are already going to have a huge condo building being built at the corner of Wellington and Island Park, which is going to dump a lot of traffic onto both Wellington and Island Park. This particular building, although it's small, my understanding is that there is going to be an indoor style, Nordique style spa in the bottom of this particular building. If that is the case, it's going to become almost like a tourist attraction. People are going to be coming from all over to enjoy this. Yes, of course, there's transit, but I think that there's going to be a lot of issues with parking. There's going to be a lot of issues with traffic, and there's also going to be a lot of issues with, let's say, garbage. I'm not sure how people are going to be handling that particular problem. If it is going to be an indoor Scandinavian-style spa, it's going to produce a lot of garbage. It's going to produce a lot of steam inside, boilers. I don't know how they're dealing with that. It's going to create mold issues, particularly for the residents potentially above. I used to work on a cruise ship, and I worked in something similar. So I know the kind of issues that it takes in order to deal with these types of things. A huge amount of garbage, a huge amount of laundry. And then the other issue that I have with the building is we're already in a canyon feeling in that area. There's not a lot of light. If this building is built, there's going to be a lot of issues with light for the people on the other side of 89 Richmond. Their windows could be blocked on that side. So I did read a little bit about setbacks. There is a suggestion of doing a 4-story as opposed to 6-story. There's putting the Zen garden in the front, which I think would probably be a better idea, just to maybe avoid that canyon style that we're getting in there. And then I guess, you know, I have a question, of course, about timeline, but I know you can't answer that as to when this potentially could be going forward, but those specifically are my concerns.
Okay, so we have staff here that have been working on this project with the applicant, with the community.
Yep.
So you've raised some, I think, some typical concerns that we hear all the time. You've added some new ones, however, and I'm going to ask staff to respond to those questions.
Okay.
Why they made the decision they did based on understanding your concerns.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. With respect to the concerns about traffic, there is no parking required for the commercial use, and we did have a
Did you say there's, I need you to speak louder. Did you say there's no parking required?
no parking is required for the commercial use,
What is the commercial use?
the spa.
And there's no parking required for a spa?
No, that's correct.
Nobody from Barhaven's going to want to go there?
Potentially. The zoning bylaw does not require parking for the spa at this location due to the size. We had a transportation engineer review the proposal, and there were no transportation concerns associated with it. With respect to concerns about garbage, we've had the city's waste management group review the proposal. The applicant will be required to provide private pickup for the commercial use, so for the spa. And so that issue has been addressed through the site plan process. With respect to the concerns about the canyon effect, we were sensitive to that as well when reviewing this proposal. And it's staff's opinion that the articulation that's provided at the front of the building with the 2-meter step back above the 4th floor provides some relief along that stretch of Richmond Road. And so it's our opinion that that step back mitigates any negative impacts of furthering that canyon effect.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Leeper has some questions,
Sure.
or has some comments or questions. Yeah, questions.
Just the comments, so
This is for,
89 Richmond, for Ms.
For
Murdoch.
Amy?
Yep, for Ms. Murdoch.
Perfect.
Just, we can have some further discussions here. I know the owner is aware that a lot of people are not going to be taking transit for a spa day, so they're working to find parking elsewhere that they can kind of create a valet service. There won't be a lot of people in the spa at any given time. So today, Planning Committee, I'm going to guess, will recommend to Council that this be approved. We'll have a week and a half or so until Council approves it, and then there will be a site plan process where I'll again be going out to the public for a bit of a consultation on that one. But if you give my office a call, I'm happy to work through some of these questions for you.
Just because I'm not sure if the owners are aware, but to make something like this work, you're going to need to have about 100 people a day, plus about 30 staff.
Yeah.
So that's pretty significant numbers of people coming to that particular building.
It is, and they're aware that the local parking is
Yeah.
extremely challenged. So
Are they also aware that there's another one down the street?
the Livia?
Upliva?
Yeah,
Yeah,
it'll be-
okay.
it's
So we're going to
becoming a
have
spa
two
zone.
right within
Yeah.
a couple
And
of...
Upliva doesn't have parking either.
No, I know. Yeah.
It's an interesting neighborhood where businesses are choosing to move, take advantage of foot traffic, take advantage of the vibe on the street, and they're moving in despite knowing very well that parking on the street is extremely challenged. So, but more than happy to continue working with you through the next week and a half before council, and then once we move into site plan, where some of the specific details that you've raised will be dealt with as well.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
thank you, Councillor Leeper. So that's a commitment from your councillor.
Thank you very
Thank you for coming out. So Carl Fernie from FOTEN, do you have anything to say? Or Kevin Reed from Rod Leahy? Hi.
Unless there's specific questions, Madam Chair, or
Okay, anyone have any questions? One quick question of which one?
Oh, I don't know questions, sorry, just a quick comment.
Okay, we're good. Comment?
Just quickly to members of the committee, I am really pleased actually to see something coming in for Richmond Road in my ward that essentially meets the spirit and word of the secondary plan. A 6-story building on Richmond Road is it's what's contemplated for the neighborhood, and I'm glad to see something come in and ask for a 6-story building. This is not a radical rezoning, so thanks to the owners for not grasping.
Good. There you go. So we don't have any amendments or anything on this one. So on the item 89 Richmond Road, official plan and zoning bylaw amendments, is it carried? Thank you. Okay, so the next one is the zoning bylaw amendment and plan of subdivision for 21 Withrow in Cityview, the first home my parents ever owned. I was 6 months old, huh? Not this house, at the corner of Bassano and St. Clair. Anyway, first speaker up is Nick Tinker. Nick? Everybody, for your information, you're going to have 5 minutes each. Our committee coordinator does time you so that it's fair for everybody. And turn the mic on, just press the button. There you go.
Okay,
And try to speak right into it, because we have a terrible system in this room.
thanks very much. This is quite an intimidating room for me, and I didn't realize I'd be first, but I think I'm going to set the stage for a lot of what you're going to hear today, and I'm going to do it in the context of what your decision is about, I hope. Every decision comes with a sacrifice. Members of this committee have been asked to sacrifice a unique, historied heritage property filled with mature trees that Ottawa should be proud of, that counts towards first-class green space, that should be part of city building, and that would inevitably attract a better, more appropriate plan. The prize for making this sacrifice is a small luxury development lacking mature trees, composed of large houses with huge driveways on tiny lots. Not very exciting for city building, I would say. After hearing many of today's presentations, I sympathize with the committee who may be thinking, I really don't want to destroy 100 mature trees in a city that wants more trees. I really don't want to sacrifice this opportunity for Ottawa to be proud of a small remaining part of its rural and cultural heritage. I don't want to contradict the fabric of a unique and livable community of City View. I don't want to sacrifice the principles of the urban parkland strategy, and we recognize that the committee has not been asked to weigh two options. The committee is simply asked to decide if this current plan is appropriate for this current location, and you do have the option to say no. So you're going to hear a lot about City View today, but I'm just going to concentrate on what we feel are the reasons that you can say no to this development. First of all, lot size and built coverage. This is just a quick picture from Google Street View of a typical street in our neighborhood. You'll recognize this, Ms. Harder, from your days in this neighborhood. It's a very unique neighborhood. It looks nice. People like it the way it is, and it's important for Ottawa to preserve neighborhoods like this. This is not what's going to happen. And I just show this picture of a mature tree because there are many mature trees on the new lot where I'm not allowed to walk, but mature trees like this cannot remain on this property. They get in the way of putting four-car driveways on very small lots, which is what is proposed. This is typical, again, of what's happening in the neighborhood. The 50-foot lots that you see here are a variance that's being approved on what should be 65-foot lots according to the bylaw. This is what 50-foot lots do. The current development is proposing 40-foot lots on most of the properties. City View is zoned for 65-foot lots. Approving 40-foot lots goes far beyond the 50-foot lots that are already destructive of our neighborhood fabric. The second point I want to make, City View is already in a parkland deficit. Cash in lieu should have been collected on more than 100 infill homes in our community. That should have gone a long way towards purchasing this property. There's been a loophole in cash in lieu, which could be talked about. But the long and short of it is that these 13 new homes with no green space of their own will draw on a neighborhood that is already in parkland deficit. Furthermore, in cruel irony, this property has been given an artificially inflated value beyond what the cash in lieu could possibly support by entertaining a development that goes far beyond the zoning density. Do you see how this is tragically circular and ironic? We think a lawyer ought to look at this one. The third reason I give you is that this property surrounds a heritage home. You'll hear a lot about that. If this property must be developed, it should reflect the character of this home. It should include open space, mature trees that are hallmarks of the estate's heritage. And the public should be able to see the home and reflect on its place in Ottawa's history. This planned development achieves none of that. There has been no real effort to design with nature or with heritage, and as there could have been, just by respecting the bylaw density in the neighborhood. Instead, the development flaunts a request to push the development density far beyond what it is zoned for. So I leave you with these three reasons. You're going to hear more about these reasons. You're going to hear more about the heritage from other speakers. Please keep what I think are these three reasons to say no to this development in mind as we go through today. And all of these other reasons that may strike your passion, you can use these three reasons to say no and go home with a clear conscience.
Yeah, you actually did perfect timing. You could even say more if you wanted to, but I think you said it very well, so thanks very much. Anyone have any questions for Mr. Tinker? No? Thank you for coming out, sir.
Thank you.
Next up is Peter Ludwig. Peter, thank you for your submission in advance. I got to tell you, that was the first time that's ever happened.
Nope, not mine. Good morning, everyone, and thank you very much for everyone showing up on this wintry day. My name is Peter Ludwig, and I've already submitted a full document with attached schedules which include photographs. I don't have overheads, so I've also sent in a statement, and the title of the statement is "It's All Kamori." And you also should have a copy of my statement, and I really refer to it as my argument. And I certainly concur with everything that the previous speaker said, and I will add and maybe fill in a few more points. So if you wish, you can follow my argument. I'm aware that 5 minutes is very short, so I'm going to try to be as expeditious as possible. As I said, the title of my statement is "It's All Kamori." The trifurcated proceedings have all been strongly influenced by the historic Campbell Kamori residence, as well as the lands surrounding the structure. The surrounding land includes more than 100 mature trees, including some 80 trees stretched along Withrow Avenue itself. And if you recall from the location, it's bounded by the corners of Withrow and St. Helens Place. And in behind is Tower Road, and sort of in the middle is Rita Avenue, touching on, or close to, four roads. For the people like myself whose families have lived in the area close to 21 Withrow for decades, the loss of 21 Withrow as a public green space is how a person it feels like how a person whose heart has been removed, metaphorically speaking. In this instance, it is, in fact, the whole community. Located near the entrance of Maryvale Road and running midpoint and parallel between Meadowlands and Baseline. It is the gateway to the center area of Cityview. The land in question consists of approximately 2 acres of open green space, trees, and the stately historic home, which again other speakers have, and Nicholas has spoken to. And this has influenced the neighborhood for decades. And whether walking, running, driving, cycling, this is the fabric of Cityview, the center of Cityview. And we all know that passing trees and open green space is an integral part of being a human being and enjoying life. It has therapeutic and many benefits. On page 2 of my argument, when you look at the photographs attached in Exhibit 1, and that's the document that was submitted on Wednesday, you will see that the trees along Withrow, the underlying branches, and you will also see the effects of a mature, double-trunked, rare butternut tree that has been stumped, and you can see the after effects of that stumping. The picture speaks for itself. You will also see the remodeled carriage home, which was originally associated with 21 Withrow, to the immediate west of the 21 Withrow property. The photographs also show recently built new infill homes just meters further west along 21 Withrow. And again, the previous speaker showed an example, which is basically a wall of structure instead of nature.
You have 40 seconds left.
Sorry?
Just letting you know you have about 40 seconds left.
40?
Yeah, and I'll give you an extra 7 because we're having this conversation.
Thank you. In Exhibit 1, you can also see the Withrow Street markings for 21 Withrow, which is simply the number 21 hung from a tree branch. The pictures also show the large limestone-like rocks that were suddenly removed from the English-styled wall that was along the entire road frontage of 21 Withrow. This wall seemed to suddenly be taken down after standing in place for decades. Most importantly, it is a matter of great interest that after all the effects of after all the efforts of people who are sitting around me in this room, as well as others who cannot be here and have fought for years to save the Kenmore 21 2-acre green space, which is set out in shown again in document 3. Landscape plans, Mr. Mary Dickinson of 21, who authored the 21 Withrow report, recorded only on Monday, February 4th, 2019, the proposed single private lane has been named Kenmore Private. So from the very beginning...
Sir, that's...
Okay, thank you very much. My document is on the record.
You
appreciate
gave
your
us
time.
a lot in your submission.
Yes, I appreciate
And
that.
you have to trust us that we have all read it.
Yes, so maybe if they...
If there's anyone has any questions at all?
Thank you.
No? Anyway,
Okay,
thank you, sir.
Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you for coming out.
You're welcome.
Joan Clark? Joan, I think I saw you here. There you are. Come on down. Joan is the president of the City View Community Association, and she too has sent us a submission, which we have. You could just sit at the first mic there unless you are doing a presentation.
Morning, Madam Chair, members of the Planning Committee. My name is Joan Clark, and I'm president of both City View Community Association and the Kilmore Heritage Society. City View Community has been working for years to try to save this house and property at 21 Withrow. Our community was part of a group who were instrumental in having the house declared heritage. City View felt that the land at 21 Withrow was an important part of this landmark in our community. It reflected the history of the early settlers who arrived in Nepean. It is also the last green space in a community that is the second lowest ratio of homes to parkland in the city of Ottawa. We must protect this green space. Once green space is gone, it is gone forever. As our community researched the story of 21 Withrow, it became more evident to us the landmark is not just about City View. It was much bigger than we were. We partnered with other groups, people supporting the preservation of this house and land started to contact us and became involved with us. People gave us money and signed pledges to help out with more money and help out with in-kind contributions to restoring and maintaining the house and the property. Kilmore Heritage Society, formed and incorporated in March 2019, is the result of formalizing the importance of saving this history. Our goals are to promote Canadian artists in all fields of art and culture, to promote equal opportunities for artists, to promote outdoor garden sports, to create a recreation and cultural center, to be aware that the property is situated on unceded Algonquin territory, to facilitate and support the teaching of Canadian arts, to facilitate the establishment and upkeep of heritage gardens, and to provide opportunities to celebrate the past and Kilmore's special place in the history of City View. That's what the future should be for 21 Withrow. Why are we here? To object strenuously to the acceptance of this proposed subdivision and rezoning. To represent the wish of the people, the taxpayer. To oppose a rezoning that seems to be created just for this subdivision. Why do we have bylaws? And we're here to communicate to you, the Planning Committee, that this proposal is the wrong use of this precious land. Just a few days ago, we celebrated Remembrance Day. This is a day to remember the sacrifices that these men and women endured for the generations to come. This was not about money. It wasn't about them. It was about the state of our country for those who follow after us. our children, and our children's children. That is our responsibility. Protect what is precious and celebrate it. Do not waste it on short-term gains. How can we stop this subdivision from happening? It all reminds me of a Joni Mitchell song, "They Pay Paradise to Put in a Parking Lot." How can you, the Planning Committee, who represents the good decisions for our city, help to make this right? By listening to the people. How can the Planning Committee justify the enormous time spent on making a development acceptable instead of helping our community create a hub where people would gather? In fact, it was a city employee from the planning department who appeared as an expert witness for this development at an LPAT hearing. No one from the city was there to support us, or the decision made by the Committee of Adjustment. We were on our own once again. We, the City View Community Association, Kilmorey Heritage Society, have worked tirelessly to save this landmark. Most of our time has been preparing and researching our opposition, a subdivision that will set a precedent in our community. Developers will use this case to take down more trees and crowd in more houses. What do we want? We want to celebrate our history. We want to promote the arts. We want to share the Indigenous culture with those who don't understand. We want a center, a hub for people to gather. Our area has a large population of seniors. When we talk about a park, we visualize swings and monkey bars. What about our seniors? What about a nature park? Or do we treat seniors the same way we treat our history? Move over and make room for more houses. How can we achieve our goals? We need to acquire the property and save it from development.
Joan,
Okay.
your 5 minutes
Whoops.
is a little bit past. But thank you. Again, we did have your submission. That's one, for everybody that's here, I know that a lot of people, this will be the one and only time you ever come here, but it's really helpful when we have the opportunity to read it. Do you have a question? Councillor Gower has a question.
I want to first ask, it was you who wrote the article in The Citizen earlier this week?
Yes.
The op-ed? Okay, thank you for that. It was a good overview. I've been following this one for a few years through Heritage Ottawa's efforts to ensure heritage designation. But I was just, the idea of anyone acquiring the property, I know you're doing fundraising, but what's the idea of what kind of value does this land have? What would the owner sell it for? How much would need to be raised in order to acquire the property?
We have been talking to the owner. I don't think he's given us a dollar value.
And you've set a goal for your group of 500,000 that would be part of.
We did. That was our councillor's advice. There is some options to us, like we did do a levy, and we surveyed half of our homes, and we had a 70% agreement to pay a $60 levy for 10 years. So that was successful, and then it was stopped. There were a couple of other deals, but the cash in lieu, the central cash in lieu, because this is bigger than City View or Ward 8, it is a city of Ottawa Park cultural center. So cash in lieu, in my mind, could be used to help us out. And then there have been donors. Everybody who wants to donate money is kind of waiting for this decision. And we have people in place, but it's been so up in the air that people are saying, we need a decision. Are we going forward? Then we're on your side. I had somebody this morning emailing me saying, I want to help preserve this. And we're getting that all the time. Yesterday I got a $1,000 check in the mail. This is happening, but we feel like 10 days ago we found out we're coming here, and it was pretty upsetting to all of us because we weren't ready for that. We were just on a roll, starting to feel we could save it.
Okay. I have some questions for staff, but I'll save them for the end. Thank you.
Okay.
Well, you can ask it now. Anyone else have any question for Ms. Clark? So hang on to your questions and then, all right, Councillor
Great.
Tierney.
Thank you. Some great material here, by the way. I appreciate
Thank you
that.
very much.
You were saying you were working with the councillor in the area and discussing a local levy to be applied to purchase this property?
That was one of our plans,
Okay, and was city staff involved in that, or was it just the councillor that was
just the
discussing?
counselor.
Okay. And how much fundraising have you done so far and raised to date?
We have about $80,000
Okay.
so far.
Substantial, yeah?
But again, everybody is kind of wanting to give, but hesitant because they're not sure this will go ahead. You know, they read the paper and figure, you know, planning won't agree or will go for the development, and we have faith that you will listen to us.
Yeah, I think the elephant in the room for a lot of your donors is there's no set value with the property owner. It sounds like you haven't come to an arrangement.
We have spoken, and I know Joey, who I've spoken to, said he'll roll out the red carpet for us, you know, to sell it. So we just need support from the city to say, this is a good idea. Yes, you know, we need that in our official plan, you know, our vision. The vision for the official plan in 2020, City View is going to be annihilated.
So just to get to it again, sorry, Joan. So the private property owner has not provided you a number of what?
Not a final number,
Okay,
no.
thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, we do have the owner is here, registered, yeah. Okay, thank you, Ms. Clark.
Thank you.
Followed by David Clark. David? Did you ever live in Burlington, David? Did you ever live in Burlington? Okay, just ask him.
Toronto.
Huh?
Toronto.
Huh?
Leaside.
Well, you have 5 minutes, sir.
Good morning. Thank you for listening to us. We've seen a number of submissions through our crossing the desk, and this one is particularly important. It's only one. It's from Mr. Arthur Capling, and he is an architect, and he designed his house many decades ago, and he lives in it, and it's right on the southeast corner of this property. It's an idyllic place, it's a wonderful place, and the next lot up to him is going to be the thoroughfare, so if it turns into a construction zone, it's going to be a nightmare. He'll lose his house. So, he wrote a beautiful letter, November the 5th, the day after that it was announced that this hearing was going to be held. So he wrote this letter, and I'm going to read it. It says it perfectly. This is a gentleman, he's well-respected, he's an architect, and he's technical, and he knows some of the details that you might want to hear. I hope I can do it in 5 minutes. For age and health reasons, I'm unable to make this presentation in person. I'm making it. My home is bounded on two sides by the property in question, so my interests in this development are paramount. It has been said many times before, but it is worth repeating. The 21 Withrow Avenue site is very special with its beautiful mature trees, its important heritage home, and its location within built-up single-family neighborhood. It deserves particular developmental attention that is sensitive to these conditions. Our community is short of parkland, and this is the last remaining open space. It's ideally suited, it's ready-made, and it's a much-needed amenity. Not only does the development proposal preclude this, it does not provide the minimum percentage of park space under the current codes. The scheme offers no public amenities of any kind and even discourages public access through the site. It is a privatized scheme. The contribution made to the Treasury at the City of Ottawa in lieu of park space would likely have little effect on our community facilities. It seems wrong to me that densification of our community should be considered without inclusion of park space. The project began badly When the for sale sign was installed a couple of years ago, it included a note that there were 14 lots available on the site. Although this is a completely arbitrary number, it established a maximum price for the property and fee for the realtor. If achievable, it would also provide maximum profit for the developer. However, over the past 2 years, the developer has yet to find a way to obtain approval for these lots. The 4 lots of this project along Withrow Avenue, the street, as presented to the Committee of Adjustment on May the 2nd, 2018, were correctly refused and for the appropriate reasons. The most recent plan for the overall property has changed little since its first iteration over a year ago. Despite the extensive critique and commentary offered to the developer since that time, his position seems to have hardened. Of the many detailed landscape and engineering comments which attempted to ameliorate the scheme to achieve some degree of acceptance, few, if any, have been satisfactorily addressed. There are 5 locations in this new plan where large blank side walls of proposed residences overpower existing neighborhood properties. The 5 units in a regimented row on the 40-foot lots within likely will have common materials, standard building plans, all minimally spaced, and are so close to row housing as can be achieved without actually adjoining them. This is overbuilt and out of character. In the dramatic contrast to the 8 lots shown in the option in another area, there is 1 lot in the northwest corner which exceeds everything greatly. Given the approach of the developer to maximize the built area on the 12 units, there is real prospect for a home on this to be gigantic. It would overshadow the heritage home and it would be a most awkward setting. It's just not acceptable. No public amenities whatsoever have been offered. There is no public access. There is privatization of a precinct. I'm going to skip. People are talking about trees and
your time's up, sir.
my time's up.
So thank you. Does anyone have any questions for Mr. Clark?
You have the, please read it.
No, I don't have yours.
No, this is his, Arthur Capling.
And don't forget, there's 2 weeks less a day, likely, until the next council meeting when this item would be on the agenda as well, so you know that. So the other members of council will have access to what you say today and to the submission. So anybody has a formal submission but hasn't submitted it yet, that would be helpful if you do, because, you know, when the committee coordinator does the minutes, it's quite limited in its embellishment of what you're saying, okay? So if you have something typed out, please make sure that you leave it with us today. Thank you. The next person up is Nancy Wilson. Nancy? Followed by Jill. Is it Prot or Prot? Pro, where are you? Can you reach it there? We'll get it for you. Hang on a second. You don't have to put your, contortionize yourself in some way. Just make yourself comfortable and we'll make it work. Welcome. No, it's not. Oh, wait a minute.
Hello.
There you go.
Hi, I'm Nancy Wilson. I live at 16 Withrow, so right across from the property. I agree with everything the first speaker, Nick Tinker, said, and the following speakers. I think it gives you a reason to say no to this proposal. I live almost directly in 21 Withrow. In this neighborhood, have always lived here. I look out my window and see the stately trees on the property, and I feel so sad and helpless, knowing that it could all be taken away from the community. It has been a landmark to me for 64 years, but it has been here for many, many more years before that. That's my statement. I've said it all before, and I live there, and I think it's very important to save this property. Jane Moore couldn't be here today, so I'm just going to read hers. She says, a note on art and heritage in Kilmorey. Kilmorey is the only home in the Confederation poets remaining in Ottawa. Ottawa destroyed the home of Confederation poet Duncan Campbell Scott on Lisgar Street opposite this very City Hall. Now it is a parking lot. Also destroyed was the family home of Confederation poet Archibald Lampman on 144 Nicholas. Throughout the years, and planning committee after planning committee, city council after city council, significant buildings in Ottawa have disappeared. For example, I still grieve the majestic Capitol Theatre on Bank Street. Ottawa has nothing to approach its stately beauty, its size and dignity. I know it sparked awe and dreams in me as a teenager, and I saw the Kingston Trio there and watched my first Shakespearean play there, King Lear. What magic I learned then, and what theatre really was. Passion and humor was vibrant, not flat words on a page. Our heritage matters. It roots us in our country, roots us in our values, gives us permanence. It promotes common understanding. It makes people feel. Our heritage places should be public, honored, and proudly displayed, not hidden, not small, not chopped into pieces. They should be used for education, for inspiration, for joy, the peace and humming hearts. What more wonderful than gardens at Kilmorey? 19th century gardens with bloodroot and hepatica, wood daffodils, and dozens of other wildflowers written about by the Confederation poets. And hour by hour among all shapes that grow, of purple mints and daisies gemmed with gold, where the burnished cups of the marigold gleams, trilliums scatter their white-winged stars. I see the bloodroot starting, all silvered with the spring. Stratford's garden of Elizabethan flowers and Shakespeare's lines from plays could be a model for our garden. Other countries celebrate their people, their histories, their places of life and art, not just in formal sculpture, but in homes and gardens and streets. We are watching the destruction of green Ottawa for light rail and condos, watching the devastation of wildlife breathing the toxic fumes of diesels and trucks and SUVs, seeing the smothering of earth with concrete and asphalt, the chopping down of trees that swallow up those fumes. Our kids are sicker, more allergic, more dyslexic, more vulnerable than ever. Keep Kilmorey lands green. Make gardens, place some benches, hold classes and some concerts. Keep Kilmorey green in the summer, scarlet and gold in the winter, or the fall, shining white in the winter. Keep Kilmorey's lands for people. And that's from Jane Moore. She's chair of the Poets Pathway. And we also have people that are interested in donating those old flowers to us for our gardens if we get there. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any questions? No, thank you. Next up is Jill Pro. Jill? And Nancy, can we have that presentation? Perfect, thank you. Welcome, Jill. Good morning to you. There you go.
Working now? Yes.
Yep. And you have 5 minutes, please.
All right. Along with the City of Ottawa councillors, we too embrace the city's value and mission. Many of these are outlined in the City of Ottawa's own official plan. The role of the official plan is to recognize the need to consider the socio-economic, environmental, and cultural outcomes of land use decisions and how these will affect future generations. The official plan is set to manage the growth in ways that reinforce the qualities of the city's most valued, qualities of the city most valued by its residents. its distinctly livable communities, its green and open character, and its unique characteristics that distinguish Ottawa from all other places. The plan states, this plan meets the challenges of growth over the next 20 years by pursuing strategic directions in the following key areas: managing growth, providing infrastructure, maintaining environmental integrity, and building livable communities. Notes under these headings include green spaces will be valued and protected for their environmental, cultural heritage, recreational, educational, and aesthetic qualities. Familiar landscapes and heritage buildings will be conserved despite ongoing change. Growth will be managed in ways that create complete communities with a good balance of facilities and services to meet people's everyday needs, including schools, community facilities, parks, a variety of housing, and places to work and shop. Attention to design will help create attractive communities where buildings, open space, and transportation work together. Other sections of the official plan are also relevant to the consideration of this application. Section 233, with regards to stormwater management, it states that stormwater retrofit planning is required to address the cumulative impacts of infill development in areas of the city that developed without stormwater management. This is City View. This should be addressed before any other development is approved in our community. We have no storm sewers. Section 241, air quality and climate change, the OP notes the city will take measures to adapt to the effects of climate change by reducing the urban green island effect, urban heat island effect through landscaping, tree planting, and encouraging of courtyards and innovative green spaces with permeable surfaces and trees, and of green building measures such as the use of green roofs, living roofs, walls, and light-colored building materials. It is ironic that the city encourages tree planting. In this case, it's considering the removal of over 100 trees. With respect to green spaces, Section 245, the official plan notes, green spaces and woodlands in urban areas and villages also help create a sense of place and provide physical boundaries, features, and buffers within and between communities. They moderate climate and provide a place to grow food in community gardens. As historical settings, cultural heritage landscapes provide information about the past. The official plan continues, Ottawa residents value their green spaces and recognize the contribution green space makes to the high quality of living here. As the population of the city grows to 20,031, the challenge will be to maintain these high standards as new communities are added and existing neighborhoods accommodate infill and development. Council will pursue the target for a total green space in the form of open space and leisure land across large areas of the urban area to fill objectives expressed in the Green Space Master Plan, strategies for Ottawa's urban green spaces. A target of 4 hectares per 1,000 population, or approximately 16 to 20% of gross land area, will be pursued. With respect to cultural heritage resources, Section 255, it states, heritage is a crucial aspect of the city's planning and infrastructure. It has the power to transform mundane daily experiences into a deeper understanding of where we have come from, and it enhances our quality of life by engendering an appreciation of local identity and shared community. Our cultural heritage, more than any other element of urban design, defines what is unique and distinct about Ottawa, and it contributes to the livability of our communities.
You've got 5 seconds.
Okay. It also states the city can participate...
You have no seconds.
All right, yeah. But I'd just like to say, in summary,
your submission.
many of these policies have not been considered in the review of this application.
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions for Ms. Pro? Thank you very much for coming out. Next is Mary Sue Halliburton. Mary Sue, are you here? Thank you for sending in your submission as well.
Okay. I would just like to speak from the heart about the importance of this place. And people have referred to it as being, you know, the heart of Cityview. It's also a green beating heart in the whole amalgamated city. If you look at the map, almost right in the geographical center, Kilmorey House. And to destroy this beautiful property will be an irreversible mistake. I don't believe that it should be allowed. And there's so many aspects of the proposed development that just seem completely wrong-headed, as other people have expressed in some detail. I was going to look a bit at the issue of water runoff, and the problem here is a planning and urban management have decided that water is a waste product instead of a precious resource. And so even the city is requiring people to raise the level of the property so the water will run onto the road. If you do that at Kilmorey House, the property is going to have to be raised 4 or 5 feet to bring it above the level of Withrow because it slopes down. And the developer's notion was that he would have a huge holding tank for the water and then release it gradually to the storm sewers on Maryville. The problem is that he wants to install a holding tank where there were a few trees left, and so those trees would be destroyed. It's the trees that take up the water. They take up the water, it transpires, it goes into the atmosphere, and that helps to cool everything. That holding tank isn't going to cool the neighborhood. And we cannot just sit by and watch this wrong-headed thing be done. The paving over and the roofs and all the solid area means that all that water is going somewhere. And this isn't just our neighborhood. The whole city is doing this. And more water runs off faster and faster, and we get more and more flooding in the spring because that water is not being held back. Anywhere, we need to regard water as a resource. And one of the submissions I sent in, and I've brought it to people's attention before, is the possibility that every home, and I don't mean just in the proposed development, but every new home built, should have its own cistern. And all these garages, they don't have any rooms below them. You could install a huge cistern there. The water from the roof could go into it. The homeowner would have water for the lawn and the garden and everything else. And that would save us from some of the flooding that is happening in the spring. All these properties near the water that are vulnerable. It's because there is too much runoff and because this kind of wrong-headed development idea that water has to run onto the road. It shouldn't. And so that's just another one aspect of this development that seems wrong to me. But what we need to do here is value something very special and unique. It's special and unique in all of Ottawa. To have this beautiful home, to have grounds around it. And, you know, we've respected private property. We don't go onto the property because we know it's not public access. But this new development would completely destroy any hope of access, any hope of people being able to visit the heritage property, which we should be allowed to do. And the committee, or the foundation that's set up that would like to manage it, that would like to have it public access to hold cultural events there, that none of that will be able to happen. And so I would like to appeal to the members of this committee to say no to this development. The Committee of Adjustment even had said no completely to it, but LCAT came in and their process was kind of slanted, and their lawyers controlled all the information. We had to submit papers to them and not to the adjudicator. And so I felt that it was almost a foregone conclusion that the developer was going to get his way through that. And so here we are again, making an appeal for human values to override just bean counters. And we've seen what bean counters have done to the transit system. It's a wreck. And it's not just the trains. So I just want to say thank you to everybody for hearing all of our comments today, and please make a good decision on behalf of preserving heritage. Thank you.
Thank you very much for coming out. Thank you.
So everybody saw these?
Ben Glossop. Ben?
If I speak in a loud voice, is it okay if I don't sit down in the chair without arms?
Are you on the internet?
Okay.
Well, okay, the tons of people listening on the internet won't, but you know what? We'll hear you better than if you sit down.
Are
So
you sure?
stand.
It's okay.
Voice is certainly loud enough.
Canada is a young country. Many other countries greatly honor and understand the value over years and years of their culture and their artists. Ottawa has two wonderful estates, the William Lyon Mackenzie King estate, the Billings estate. These are estates for great politicians and businessmen, but an estate of great artists in Ottawa just doesn't exist. The estates of other Confederation poets have been destroyed in meetings like this over the years, and I would like to hope that we can do better today. William Wilfred Campbell was a great man. He was our first poet laureate. He wrote many important documents for our country, for the history of our country. He was brought to Ottawa to be a voice for our country. When he reached a certain age and a certain position, he had the opportunity to buy his place in the country, and this was the Kilmorey estate, where the nature that he loved and that he wrote so much about, and that he created a Canadian voice for, an understanding of we as Canadians and our love of nature and our recognition that nature is what people around the world see as being part of Canada. He helped create this. I'm from the Poets Pathway Committee. We created a monument to Canada's poets. It is a green necklace that goes within the green belt of Ottawa, and it is this green space that is a symbol of what the Confederation poets wrote about and what gives us a sense of self as Canadians. The lands of Kilmorey are a green cathedral. The beautiful trees are a wondrous oasis that make people feel at peace and inspire them in ways that all artists can relate to. I've had visions of standing across the street from Kilmorey as the chainsaws are out, maybe singing this song.
the glad deep woods I go. All the brooks are foaming in amber pools. The mornings are still as the noonday cool.
Thank you. I gave you a little bit more time. I just didn't know where it was appropriate to cut you off, to tell you the truth.
Wow, that would be a symbolic question here tonight, wouldn't it?
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you. Anybody have any questions? No? Next up is Karen Lynch. Followed by Mo Royer.
Hello, everyone. So I'll start. The fundamental intent of policy and legislation is to meet the public good, and the intent of the City of Ottawa's new official plan is to provide a blueprint to achieve this in a city with a rapidly growing population. However, our community is experiencing the rapid erosion of a foundation upon which the most livable mid-sized city in North America can be developed. By the time the city approves and is fully capable of implementing the plan, our community will already be developed into a slab of concrete. Our extensive tree canopy, all other plant components, and the diverse species that they will support will be gone, as well as the environmental services and health benefits they provide to improve our quality of life. We can call ourselves a mature community. We have no parks. Our green space is mainly on private property. Our green space is the green stuff on our properties. When you look down a street in City View without the current infilling, as Nick showed you, you see streets lined with trees, lots with shrubs, and soft plant material. When you look down a street with current infilling, no trees, no greenery, no gardens, the same stone mansions covering the whole lot, perhaps with a small token lawn. A concrete and stone desert. That is what is development. The city is committed to a climate change strategy. Even mature communities such as City View, with their greenery, can collectively contribute to mitigating the effects of climate change, such as the cooling effect, the reduction of heat island and albedo effects, and improving air quality. And it has been proven that green space is essential to healthy communities, both physically and mentally. Our private property green space, the green stuff, contributes to our community health. The city could promote an appropriate type of development in mature communities such as City View, rather than the erasure of every tree, shrub, and all associated living beings. The type of development that takes place now provides no compensation or replacement for loss. The loss of environmental services, the loss of health benefits. It gives nothing back to the community. It deprives the community. So Kilmorey, a green oasis, 2 acres with over 100 mature trees, as mentioned by previous speakers, with a great variety of species, is environmentally significant. It could contribute greatly to community health and livability. It is the only and best possibility for our community to have a real and lasting green space with all its benefits. It should be conserved and protected for the public good.
Thank you very much. Anyone have any questions? Thank you for coming out. Mo Royer or Royer, which one is it, Mo? Pardon?
Whichever one you like.
Oh, whichever one I want. Well, if it's Mo as in Maurice, then that leads me in a certain direction, and if it's Mo as in Morris, that takes me in a...
Mo?
Thank you.
Anyway, you have 5 minutes. Thank you, sir, for coming up.
Thank you. Members of council, Madam Chair. I'm a resident of Ottawa and I've always lived here all of my life. My parents have, my great-grandparents have. We've seen a lot of things happen in our communities. I'd like to start off by congratulating all the people prior to me who spoke. They spoke from their heart and their beliefs, not only for their community, but for all communities. You all have an opportunity today and the few days coming to make some decisions. We've done a lot of development in our city, as we all know. To find people like you've had prior to me again, dedicated to help the city, to help the councilors, to arrive at something they love to see is amazing. I was part of the committee for a period of time. And I wasn't able to continue only because there was a health matter in my family. And I didn't find out about this meeting today until yesterday. But I didn't want to miss it. We can make such a difference here. We talk about the anger out there in our communities. Maybe we can help by having this place as a peaceful place to go. Maybe we can have someone in the building who can encourage peace. They can encourage all peoples to meet together and to learn more about one another. There's so many things that people have said here that I don't need to repeat. You're all aware of them. I had the opportunity of walking through the area, not inside the area, but around the area. It is gorgeous. Yes, people talk about trees, and yes, we've lost many trees on the fact of RET and many other factors, but they're beautiful. I picture people coming in this room, in this place, to walk around with their children and friends and try to work together as a country of peace. We have troubles in our communities. This can be an example of not having some troubles in our communities. The people that I've met who work on this project were not aware that I was coming here today. But the dedication that they have put through this area is just incredible. I'm repeating myself, but we can't not forget the concerns that they have and for the rest of the community. I don't live in the area, and I don't think we need to have to live in the area or want to live in the area. But at least I would know that there's an area that I can go to and enjoy it without worried about the number of buildings that are raising or built within their communities. Now, I don't have any information in writing. I'm sorry about that. However, I will in the days follow. And I just want you to know that I know councillors, because I know you feel, have a difficult job. But think about why you became councillors, to help the community. Thank you.
So, sir, I just want to verify, where's this sheet that he signed up on? Hang on a second.
Madam Chair, Mo was good.
Most good. So when you signed up, you said that you agreed. You
Yes.
agreed with the application?
Right.
Okay. Well,
I'm
I'm
sorry.
sorry, but,
I'm supporting the group.
okay, but that's why I'm asking you.
I apologize.
Because you say that you agree, and so that's what I'm saying.
No, I apologize. I misspoke.
Which is why I'm clarifying it.
I thank you so much for that.
You are welcome, because you had me confused for a while. Doesn't happen often, but when it does, it's very frightening. Thank you very much for coming out, sir.
Thank you so much. Have a good day.
You too. Next up, we have the representatives of the applicant, Emma Blanchard, Jonah Bond, and the owner, Joey Taberge. Are any of you coming up? It's your choice entirely, obviously. Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the Planning Committee. My name is Jonah Bond. To my right is Emma Blanchard of Bort Ladner Gervais. She's legal counsel to the applicant. I'll make a few brief remarks outlining the salient points of the application, and we'll leave it at that, as I know there have been many speakers this morning. You're in receipt of a comprehensive written report from planning staff. I will do my best not to repeat all the contents of that report. I think it speaks for itself. A considerable amount of time, money, and effort has been expended in advancing the applications for subdivision and zoning bylaw amendment since they were filed over 2 years ago in early November of 2017. There has been, in our view, ample opportunity for public consultation. Please recall there's been a parallel process over the past couple of years with a Committee of Adjustment application and a subsequent LPAT hearing for 4 lots fronting Withrow, which do not form part of the subdivision. I'll touch on this in a few moments. Let me say that we acknowledge and respect the comments from the public. We've done our best to address their concerns, and we believe that we've arrived at a final plan that is based on sound planning principles. This is a highly unique site. We acknowledge that. This is 0.8 acres of land with frontage on 3 streets. It's improved with a heritage-designated structure known as Kilmorey House. Kilmorey House and the lands are privately owned. It was constructed 170 years ago. Kilmorey is not being demolished, and City View, in our view, is not being annihilated. City View is evolving. It should be noted that the cost to rehabilitate Kilmorey is significant. In my discussion with the applicant, I'm given to understand that it could cost upwards of $400,000 to $500,000 to make Kilmorey House a habitable residence. With respect to the subdivision proposal, the application calls for 10 freehold lots, 9 of which will contain 2-story detached dwellings on lots ranging in size from 353 to 777 square meters. The Heritage House will remain showcased amongst this enclave on a 1,084 square meter lot. Once again, it is being saved, not demolished. Recall once again that the application applies only to part of the site. The lands fronting on Withrow will contain 4 homes, detached dwellings, being developed pursuant to consent and variance applications and ultimately an LPAT decision dating back to May of 2019 in our favor. All common elements, private road and stormwater infrastructure, will be jointly owned through a joint tenancy agreement between all freehold owners within the subdivision. There is a concurrent zoning bylaw amendment proposal rezoning the lands from R1FF, exception 632, which is the zoning in the bulk of City View, to an R1R special exception zone. This once again pertains only to the lots within the subdivision in the interior portion, not the 4 lots fronting on Withrow. With respect to our planning rationale, the provincial policy statement, which provides the overall guidance for land use planning in the province of Ontario, calls for the efficient development patterns and an appropriate housing mix. We submit that we are satisfying this directive. We are also protecting the cultural heritage asset in the form of rehabilitation of Kilmorey House. The official plan of the City of Ottawa designates the lands as general urban area. We feel that we are contributing to a range of housing types by providing a much sought-after form of housing stock, being single-family detached residences that are consistent with the urban design guidelines for low-rise infill housing, and accordingly we are satisfying the goals of city intensification. In my view, one of the most important points to recognize here is that of compatibility. Compatibility does not mean the same as. What it means is it can coexist with, and it's our view that the 10-lot subdivision will coexist with the existing fabric and lotting pattern in City View. Bear in mind that the access for the subdivision will be on a private road, it'll be shielded from the community, and will form an enclave. The 4 lots fronting on Withrow are a different development fabric, more consistent with the overall City View lotting pattern. So once again, it's a 2-phase development with a serviced public road serving the 4 lots on City View, on Withrow rather, which are not part of the subdivision. And phase 2, which we're discussing today, will have a different lot fabric, a different architectural style to respect the Kilmorey House, and will be governed by a different zoning, which has been proposed in the staff report. Tree conservation will consist of a combination of preservation and replanting with a landscape buffer around the houses. Stormwater management will be at a higher level than that in the rest of City View with an underground storage treatment plant. And those are my submissions.
Thank you. So we have some, Councillor Dudas has questions. Councillor Dudas? And then Councillor Leeper.
Perfect.
And Councillor Tierney, Vice Chair Tierney and Councillor Gower. But does everyone have questions of the applicant? Councillor Dudas.
I do have some questions.
Sure.
You were speaking about the trees.
Yes.
And the replanting and preservation plans. Can you elaborate a little bit more, just a little bit more on your preservation? I've been looking at images of the trees that are along there. They're lining the edges of the property. What can we expect to see according to your plans?
So once again, there's 2 components to the development. There's the 4 lots fronting on Withrow, which actually do not form part of the subdivision. Those are being developed pursuant to an LPAT decision in May of 2019, and that's a different development application. The preservation and rehabilitation or replanting that I'm referring to relates to within the actual interior portion on the private road that'll be cut in through St. Helens. So I'm not a landscape architect. I can't speak to the particulars of numbers and varieties of trees, but there will be preservation and rehabilitation to the greatest extent possible to facilitate the development.
So I'm looking at the image right now. You're saying that the trees in the heart of the property will be preserved?
Sorry, say that again, pardon me?
The trees that are in the middle, in the heart of that little property are going to be preserved? I know you're not an expert, but I'm just clarifying as to, you said preservation. I'm just curious, does that mean 1, 2 trees, 12 trees?
Okay.
The middle of the trees?
It's an excellent point. So there is an approved landscape plan. I have a copy of that in front of me. I'm happy to review this with you, but I'm not sure how to...
Pass it to
I
me
can
when
pass
you're
it forward to you
done?
if you'd like.
Okay, because I have another question. So the house itself, that's never been public access, it's never been a museum, no one's ever been able to access the house?
That's my
or the property.
understanding.
Is it being inhabited at the moment?
It's not inhabited at the moment, and it's my understanding from the developer, it's not in a state which is considered habitable. It needs a significant amount of work to make it a place where someone could reside.
How long has it been empty for?
I can't speak to that in particular, and perhaps
4 years?
I take it that. I don't know for sure.
And so you had mentioned that it's going to be between $400,000 and $500,000 to make it livable. Is the intention to then sell it to a homeowner? Or what's the intention?
Yes, the intention is to sell it to a private homeowner. So the number I've been given for rehabilitation is anywhere up to $400,000 to rehabilitate the actual house. There's a separate garage structure which is not designated heritage that has to be rebuilt at a cost of approximately $100,000.
So, and there's no homeowner lined up? Is that there's an opportunity for the community to obtain that house? Like, I'm just curious as to what the intent is for the house.
I presume anyone can make an offer on a private sale to acquire it. But the zoning is such that it would be a single-family residence, not a museum or any other cultural facility. So it's really a matter of a zoning question as to what could be in there.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Leeper?
Thanks. Councillor Dudas addressed a little bit my point. You started your presentation out by saying you're responding to the community's concerns. And one of the community's concerns is the loss of trees. And it's difficult to imagine when I overlay your plan of subdivision on top of what's there now, that this results in anything but a large loss of trees with very little open space in which to put anything. So trees, I would challenge you again to tell me how you're responding to community concerns. The loss of open space, when I take a look at the City View in whole, this is a large significant loss of open space that we've heard about from resident after resident, and I would ask you to tell me again how you're addressing the residents' concerns there. The lack of parks. You know, there are very few parks nearby. Certainly, even though I'm representing a really dense urban neighborhood, I've got a lot more pocket parks that residents could take advantage of. If you're north of Withrow, there is very little for you by way of publicly owned park space. And I challenge you to tell me how this addresses the community's concern over the loss of potential park space. They've described their commitment to doing whatever it takes to turn this into a park. I don't see how your proposal furthers their interest on that front. And also breathing space for the heritage property. I understand that the grounds are not part of the heritage designation, but it does require, in order to, I'm hearing the community's concerns about the loss of the proper framing of the heritage house. It's going to be surrounded by, you know, $1 million homes that are going to be quite large. Tell me again, how is your proposal responding to the community's concerns?
Thanks for your questions. With respect to the trees, I'll pass around a copy of the landscape plan. I can't sit here and tell you that there won't be any loss of trees. That wouldn't be truthful, but it's our view, and in consultation with the landscape architect, that there will be sufficient rehabilitation, protection, and supplementation of trees to satisfy the city's concerns in that regard. On the matter of parkland, the city conducted, I'm told, an analysis of the number, size, and location of parks and open spaces, and in the planning staff report, there's a conclusion that they found there to be adequate access in the City View neighborhood. There will be cash in lieu of parkland paid to augment the current parks in the ward and the citywide area as per city policy. And with respect to your final point about the fabric of the lot development and how it works, in order to make this development work, both physically and financially, there has to be a certain density achieved. To be frank, the development of the Kilmorey House will take place on a lot which has a minimum lot width of 23 meters and minimum lot area of 1,080 square meters. So that's about 3 times the size of the other lots in that particular enclave of homes. So some effort has been made to showcase it and to make it prominent and to protect it. I appreciate the concerns of the residents, but in order to make this all work, both physically and financially, there has to be a certain arrangement on the site. And the zoning bylaw, the R1R special exception, places the heritage designated building on a 23-meter minimum lot width with 1,080 square meters of lot area. So that is considerably bigger than the other lots.
Okay. The other question I have is probably for more for Mr. Tiberge than you folks, which is why proceed with this now? The residents are without full-time representation. Tiberge has properties all over the city that it is currently developing. You and I have chats about those from time to time. Why this property? Why now? Why not give these residents the opportunity to see what they can do in terms of saving it? And we can treat that as rhetorical unless Mr. Tiberge wants to come up. But I don't see why this is moving forward. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. Vice Chair Tierney?
Great. Thank you very much for your delegation today. I've heard a lot of the people come up, they're very passionate about this property. I heard some number of, $500,000. I look at it and go, this is $1 million property. Clearly, I'm not a realtor by any stretch, but have you actually even contemplated any kind of number? I mean, it's not new. We've seen it happen. I guess there was a golf course that's recently been purchased by the community. So have you guys given any thought to that, or is your client not in a position they want to plow ahead with the plan they have?
Well, it's a good question. I'm given to understand, subject to Ms. Blanchard's comments, that our client has this under agreement of purchase and sale, so I'm not sure he has the latitude to necessarily do that unless he assigned the agreement of purchase and sale to the residents or community association or some other society. I'll let Ms. Blanchard speak to that opportunity.
Through you, Madam Chair, I think Mr. Taberge has always been clear with the community that he would be prepared to entertain an offer, but this has been 2 years in coming, and ultimately he can't wait forever. The first application was made in 2017. I am advised that there's been no genuine offer to purchase the property. So, I mean, at the end of the day, it's not something that Mr. Taberge has necessarily foreclosed or precluded over the last 2 years, but ultimately, he's got to move ahead with his plans.
Okay, and that was my fear, because, you heard some of my questions before about, did the councillor for the area make mention of some kind of local levy that could apply to it? But at the end of the day, if there's no magic number and no one from side A is speaking to side B, it's very difficult to make this happen. So I think you've answered my questions on that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Gower?
I had questions for staff. Is that...
For staff, does anyone else have any questions for the applicant? No, thank you for coming today. Councillor Gower?
Thank you, Madam Chair. A few things I wanted to ask. One was, at least one of the delegations mentioned the parkland deficit, and I think Councillor Leeper just raised that as well. How has staff calculated the parkland required in this area and made that determination that there's no parkland deficit currently?
Jennifer Shepherd, Madam Chair, Jennifer Shepherd from Parks is here, and she's been the Parks planner on this file. I'll ask her to come forward to answer your question.
Madam Chair? Which button? Madam Chair, Council. It hasn't been calculated that there's no parkland deficit in the area. What's been calculated is the distance from Withrow to accessible parklands. So from 21 Withrow, there are 7 parks within a 1.5 kilometer radius. So their first City View Park is about 400 meters from 21 Withrow, and that's a 0.44 hectare park. Bassano Park is a 0.09 hectare park, and it's 430 meters from 21 Withrow. Gilby Park is a 3.5 hectare community park, and it is 800 meters from 21 Withrow. Doug Frobel Park is a 0.8 hectare park, and it's 900 meters from 21 Withrow. Ainsley Park is a 1.2 hectare neighborhood park. It's 1 kilometer from 21 Withrow. Paulson Park is a 0.4 hectare parkette. It's 1.2 kilometers from 21 Withrow. And Ryan Farm Park is a 1.6 hectare neighborhood park, 1.5 kilometers from 21 Withrow. So it's the site specifics of this park, of this land, that make it accessible to those parklands.
So, okay, I'm just trying to think of criteria. If the community was coming and saying, we would like the city to look at purchasing this in partnership with the community, what kind of criteria would you be looking at then to decide whether or not that's a logical or a logical purchase for the city to make?
So the
Parks and Rec, at the time when it was started to move forward, we looked at the cost of rehabilitating the Heritage House, and then that we have no way to fund the cost of that and then running it. So the rehabilitation of that house for a public use is greater than that for a single residential use, and then also running that property, it was just cost prohibitive for us.
Okay. I wanted to move on because the house does have heritage designation dating back, I think, to 2016. I don't know the specifics of that designation and what kind of setbacks or what kind of, just looking at the overall site plan, does it respect any of the requirements under the Ontario Heritage Act designation?
Madam Chair, the layout of the subdivision, Sally Coots is here, maybe you can speak to this.
Madam Chair, when the property was designated under the Ontario Heritage Act, the intention was that a parcel of land, when and if the plan for subdivision went through, that a parcel of land that was adequate to protect and honor its cultural heritage value around the property would be created, and a lot would be created, and that's what's happened through the plan of subdivision process. There was never any intention to include the entire parcel as under the Ontario Heritage Act, because staff analyzed it, and the progress of the size of the property from its original historic farm down to when the most recent property owners owned it. It went from a farm to 5 acres when the Confederation poet owned it, down to 2 when the family who were the last occupants owned it, and so the belief on the part of the heritage staff is that there had been so much loss but the preservation and conservation of the house, the designation of the house was sufficient to honor its long history in the community, but there was no need to do the entire parcel.
So in the context of what's been designated, or in context of the heritage value of the house, the current site plan that we're being asked to consider respects the context and the value in staff's opinion?
That's correct.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Back to Councillor Leeper. Anyone else have questions of staff?
May I just ask, and maybe Mr. Mark can assist, the 4 parcels that are not part of this plan of subdivision but that have been approved by the LPAT to go in along Withrow, what was the Committee of Adjustment rationale for turning those down? What were the basic arguments in front of the LPAT, and why did it decide the way it did? And are any of those arguments relevant to how the LPAT might look at the further subdivision of this larger lot?
Madam Chair, I don't have the decision of the for the severance adjacent to this parcel in front of me, so I'm not in a position to speak to the recommendations that the committee made at the time. Happy to get that information for you in advance of council, if that helps.
Yeah, I'd appreciate that. Tim, do you have any? No. So if I could see the C of A and LPAT decisions before council, that would be helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, I think that for some people who this is their first term of council, this is not the first discussion we've had on this application, and not the first time that we've heard from Mr. Chenier's park staff from the heritage aspect of why things have rolled out the way that they have. It's just taken a lot longer than normal to get to this process where we are today. So, you know, you've heard from Ms. Coots on her thoughts and the way the heritage designation went and the land around it. You heard on the parks specific. I mean, Cityview is a very defined community. It's with the exception of Ryan Farm being parked in a piece of it, it's an easy definition for Cityview. And it's interesting to hear the amount of park space. But, you know, I look at, in Barrhaven, the Mowats, one of the original farming families, and they The Mowat Farm house was kept with the Nepean designation, but the rest of the immediate farmland along Melville was developed into, I think, 8 homes or something like that, abutting, the street. It's not rare not to have parkland. It's not rare for us to get cash in lieu of parkland for properties. It happens all the time. Councillors in the inner area have got a couple of $1 million in some cases of money because we're not putting parks into there, whereas in suburban areas we tend to build the parks as we're building the communities, but not always. Right now I have one that's finally being developed by Uniform, but it's on Longfield's former Jockville through Stonebridge, and it was always called the Pink House. I took the Pink House down and they're building 56 units. They're not putting any parkland there on that space, but they're giving cash in lieu of parkland. So I think that there's a lot more history and investigation that we've done, and I know the community has been engaged for a couple of years, and the councillor was very engaged as well, and I think that that's important. Now, we're not bereft of council representation because we purposely made the decision to have council speak on behalf of, just as we have with Councillor Deans, Councillor Brockington, and Councillor Meehan are officially the representative. Councillor Moffat and Councillor Hubley are on the Councillor Shirelli's area. So I just bring that to your attention. So thank you everybody for coming out today, and thank you for the staff. Thank you, Derek, to have the wisdom to have the parks people and the heritage people. It wasn't. I'm giving credit in the wrong place. Thank you. Anybody else have anything on this? Yes, Councillor Moffat.
Thanks. I didn't have any questions for any delegations or staff, so I just wanted to, and pardon my voice. It's good times, the raspy voice. I'm going to record a jazz album when I'm done here. So on this file, I had the pleasure to meet with Joan Clark and Jill Prote last week. I had some discussions as well with Joey Taberge as well about the property, and Bill Holtzman. There's certainly some challenges in the City View, Crestview area from a park perspective. There's no question. The difficulty becomes, is that developer responsibility or is that the city's responsibility? I think, going back a couple of years on this file and being on Built Heritage when we designated it, I mean, keep in mind, the current owners were not interested in the designation whatsoever. They wanted to tear the house down and develop the entire thing. So saving the property, saving the building itself was a step in the right direction. It's difficult that we can't save the entire site, but there's also a financial component to that, as everyone knows. Hindsight being what it is, there was probably the opportunity to do more in terms of a levy process. Councillor Harder and I, and of course Councillor Meehan and Councillor Kakish before her, were involved with the levy process. With, in under 6 or 7 months, we managed to get a levy voted on and approved to the tune of $7 million to protect green space. It's not like it's impossible, but there becomes a point in time where your opportunities lapse. And I think that's one of the challenges here. From the cash in lieu of parkland perspective, there is $532,000 in the College Ward CIL account, and I think it would be wise to use that in this area. I look at the designated major open space at the very south end of Crestview, which is of the Crestview Community Association area, which is the Hydro Corridor. What are the opportunities there? What's the potential there? Development along Maryville Road with the Maryville Mall redevelopment. There should be green space in these developments. It's currently an asphalt wasteland. There should be opportunity through future growth in the area to create better amenity space. I know we listed the parks, and it's a challenge, right? Because you look at the parks, you say, yes, there's parks. But Doug Froebel Park is not exactly a community park. It's a ball diamond. It's just a ball diamond, right? So there are parks in this area, but they're very specific. So they're not just community gathering spaces. They're purpose-built parks that have specific uses. There's one down between two schools that's primarily tennis courts, privately operated tennis courts, city land, but it's privately operated. So there are some unique realities to this specific area of College Ward that do not exist in the other areas of College Ward. So I do believe it is incumbent on the city to make some effort from a park space perspective. But in terms of this actual development application, the rights are there. The official plan states that it is a general urban area. It is permissible to be developed. I know there was some mention of the climate change aspect. The climate change master plan is not going to be what you think it's going to be when it comes forward. It is going to promote intensification, severe intensification across the city that is likely going to make all secondary plans rendered moot, because it is going to require much more intensification in areas that are currently, by definition, underdeveloped. So it's not the best tool to use to fight intensification, because it is going to be the catalyst to even more intensification. I do want to ask one question, though, actually just off the top of my mind, more of a direction. There is an interesting aspect in this community from the cash and lieu perspective. In the lots, the lot fabric, they haven't all created the ability for cash and lieu to come in. Is there an ability to look at that? I know that we had this odd sort of 25 lot situation, but none of them were actually built 25-foot lots. Is there an opportunity to revisit that to make sure that we are gaining that ability in the future?
Madam Chair, there was some research into that done about a year ago. I'm happy to dig up some of that and share it with you in your current role, so that you've got some of the background on.
Yeah, because I think you will see more infill in this community, and if every single time we see that infill, if we're losing the opportunity to get cash in lieu, that's going to make the situation worse. So I'm just curious. Yeah, I'll be interested to look at that further and see what opportunities there. So I just want to thank the folks that came forward. Again, it's not an ideal situation to be in, but I do think there's possibilities here in the future, and I look forward to trying to work with the community on developing some better park space opportunities in this area.
Thank you. So we have a technical amendment.
Yeah, this is a housekeeping one again, Madam Chair. Therefore, it be resolved that the Planning Committee add the following recommendation, that the Planning Committee refer the completion of the subdivision process and registration of the subdivision plan to staff in accordance with the delegated authority bylaw.
Questions on this, that's all. So not long. Okay, so on the technical amendment? And on the item? Dissent? Okay. And you probably heard that we're looking for some more information from staff between now and council. Council will be November the 27th. And anyone who has not submitted their speaking notes, please provide them to us. And it doesn't have to be today. Send them in email or et cetera. It's just we have them so that the rest of the council can have a good look at everything before them. And also, Councillor Leeper had asked for information on the Committee of Adjustment ruling and the LPAT. Mr. Mark, our legal, says that he has at his fingertips the LPAT, not so easy for Committee of Adjustment, but that information will flow as well, and that may cause consideration. But right now, this item has passed with the technical amendment, with one dissent being Councillor Leeper. Thank you very much. The next item, the item we're going back to is that deferral item that you've seen a lot of activity in the room, inside, outside. Where's Councillor Egley? Oh, there you are. So Councillor Egley, perhaps you want to, as succinctly as possible, speak to the confusion before me and what's caused all the activity running around.
So it's not so much confusion, it's more like collaboration. So I'll get to it quickly. So I've been working along with a couple representatives from my community, because there's two community associations impacted by this project, Country Place and the Glens, around the redevelopment of the hydro site by Merivale and Thwack. So what you'll see before you is there's a technical amendment which I'm not going to speak to. I had nothing to do with that. That's just crossing Ts and dotting Is from staff's perspective. But you'll see there are two motions in front of you that Councillor Leeper has agreed to move on my behalf. At the heart of the matter is that this is a rezoning application. There isn't a specific tenant in place or project in place. So what's before you, or what was before you by way of an application, was a shopping list of uses that they would like added to the site. And some of those uses, if were not acceptable or not fitting within what the community thought should be there. So we had a series of meetings with planning staff and also with the applicant and their representatives who are here today. And so there are two motions in front of you, one which excludes certain uses and adds a 5-meter buffer to the property. And that's all fine, and that was fine before today. The second one was the one that had us shuttling back and forth in and out of the room, and that has to do with the specific uses around car dealership or repair facilities. And the community was looking at a restriction on the amount of the lot size that could be used for that. And it's, if any of you have gone past that lot, it's quite a significant lot. And so they were accepting, not happily, but accepting that a car dealership could go there. If you've seen Agnes Warda's written presentation that she sent in because she's ill today, you'll see that the community, again, not thrilled with a car dealership potentially going in that location, but decided to work with the applicant to find something that everybody could live with. So the second motion dealing with the maximal lot coverage being limited to 80% for outdoor display, sale, rental, servicing, and storage of motor vehicles and heavy vehicles is the one we've been going back and forth on this morning. And again, I want to thank Brian Casagrande and his team here today for listening to the community, being prepared to be flexible in those discussions. And his client, who couldn't be here, as I understand, is in France, I think, also has been part of these discussions. Have been going on for a couple of weeks since the deferral, so I want to thank them as well. So I think we come forward with something that both sides can live with, accepting that a car dealership would go in there potentially, and that's not necessarily what they want. But again, the applicant has been sensitive to making it as appealing a site as possible if there was a site like that. So both of these motions in front of you are supported by the applicant, and again, Councillor Leeper has agreed to move them. I'm not sure, Madam Chair, who's moving the technical amendment the staff put forward, but again, I'm not going to speak to that one.
Vice Chair Tierney is.
Okay. So again, the applicant's in favor of it. The community, again, worked collaboratively to come to this conclusion, so I would ask you all to support it. Thank you.
And so we've got, Jack, are you all by yourself left here with the original? Oh, there you are. Hi. And so it was good to see the flurry of activity and the hard work that definitely Councillor Eglai has done. So you are in agreement with these two, the one that speaks to the no gas bar, no cannabis, even though I might add that it's across the street from the one and only strip club that Nepean ever had and would ever be allowed to have. I know it's gone. I know. It's still not looking nice there, though. So you're in agreement with the technical amendment that I think that you knew before, and also the two motions before us now? Okay, perfect. So that makes our job a lot easier, everybody. Introduce the technical amendment.
Thank you, Madam Chair. As Councillor Eglai mentioned, this is the crossing T's, dotting I's. Therefore, be resolved that Planning Committee recommend to Council the zoning details in Document 3 under the proposed new exception to Section 39(2). 1. Add the text in column 5, subsection 255. Does not apply to an automobile body shop, a heavy equipment and vehicle sales, rental and servicing use, and storage yard. And be it further resolved that pursuant to the Planning Act, subsection 3417, no further notice be given.
So on the technical amendment, Carried. And so on the first motion, with regard to the add a maximum lot coverage of 80% for land use used for the outdoor display, sale, rental, servicing, and storage of motor vehicles and heavy vehicles to the provisions in column 5, and be it further resolved that pursuant to the Planning Act subsection 3417, no further notice be given. Is that item carried? Well, they've worked it out now, okay? I mean, it's good when they actually, when everybody does work it out. So, you know, thank you again, everyone, for doing that. The next item is with regard to the add the gas bar and the cannabis production facility to the land use is prohibited, and add a minimum soft landscape buffer of 5 meters along Maryville Road and Slack Road to the provisions in column 5. Carried? Good. So on the item as amended? Carried. Thank you very much. Thanks. Good work, Councillor Eglai. Thank you, Jack and Fotan. Thank you, team. Okay. So, Glenn, you are the council, sorry, Glenn. Oh, how silly of me. Item 7 was our only other held item, and it was the housing mix in new residential communities, and Councillor Gower held it. Questions?
I did have a few questions for staff. I had a chance to speak with Mr. Finley yesterday, and it was a useful conversation. But I just wanted to ask a few clarifying questions and a couple comments. The first one, I want to make sure I'm clear on the report that the 30% only applies to CDPs after June 2009. That's correct?
That's correct. There are a number of policies and a number of sections of the plan that deal with this percentage of residents. The one that generally applies to the urban area applies to CDPs after that date. There are specific ones that apply to specific areas of expansion areas added through OPA 76. So that's the reason for a number of different amendments throughout the official plan. But
you need to speak louder, please.
Okay. So there's a number of sections in the official plan that needed to be amended to implement this because it's a duplicated policy dealing with specific areas. But you're generally correct that for the general rural area, the general urban area of the city, this policy only applies to CDPs after that date.
So for the general urban area outside of these CDPs, there is no minimum
That's correct.
single
That's correct.
home? Okay. Does the province require us to set minimum percentages?
No.
No.
They only require us to provide a cross-section or a range of housing types.
A mix of
And
housing.
it's up to us to decide what that mix is.
And then I think the last question is, where does 30% come from? Why not 20? Why not 40? How did you come up with 30% in this case?
It's an agreed percentage that we have already implemented through a number of amendments to the official plan. The percentage basically came out as a result of the CDPs done for a number of communities. So that was what the industry was able to get and meet the density that we also require in those areas. So we felt it reasonable to make it a citywide standard. Now, it may well be reviewed through the new official plan. That's coming down the pipe.
So is that part of the official plan, part of the process? Like, will there be set minimums for different types of housing, or how's that being considered as part of the OP?
Yes, Madam Chair, if we deem it advisable to continue to have minimums for particular types of housing, that will be carried forward into the new official plan, yes.
Okay. It's just interesting because we have two active development proposals in Stittsville right now. One of them, the lead concern from residents is around whether or not townhomes is an appropriate form given that it's an existing single-family development, and how important is keeping single-family homes as part of the overall context of the neighborhood. And in another neighborhood, it's almost the opposite. It is in a CDP, and so far there have been too many singles built, and so one of the challenges is that any new developments, they're having trouble achieving the minimum units per hectare. So you can kind of see in different angles how these percentages are really important. But and then in the overall conversation about urban boundary expansion and building communities that are sustainable and affordable for the city to service, like it's a difficult number to come up with, and it'd be interesting to see how you approach that in the official plan recommendations. So, okay, thank you.
I had the same kind of thinking, well, along the same lines this morning. So I asked the question of, are we stuck with this amount? In suburban communities, every suburban developer will tell you what's driving growth in our city is immigration. It's new Canadians. It's nothing else than that. And they want large single homes. And without one exception, anytime there is a new development in any of our suburban communities, the people sleeping over are for the single homes. No one's sleeping over to get a townhome. Okay, so if you have 80 lots that are released for singles, people are in camps for at least 3 days waiting to buy those lots, and most of them, and this is the industry that has said most of them are new Canadians, or they're people that have been here raising their family, but they still want to have that larger family experience in their home, and they want their own property. So it's a reality that we have. So my question is, I don't want to be stuck with having something that they can't do more of. Maybe the mix has to change on the other units to make them maybe more affordable, so you have a lower end. Councillor Leeper?
Thanks. Councillor Meehan had to leave the meeting, but she did ask me to pass on the following. Councillor Meehan, yep. So her concern is that as we see fewer singles, that there's the potential for an exacerbation of parking difficulties. Ottawa already has congestion on its new residential street because homes are being built with driveways that can barely fit one vehicle. And forgive me, I think Councillor, you may have already dealt with some of this in the Building Better suburbs, are being built with driveways that barely fit one vehicle, forcing many 2 or even 3 vehicle families to park on the road, leads to parking complaints, it requires staff time for bylaw to enforce parking restrictions. Many lots are already small. Reducing single unit dwellings will allow developers to squeeze even more people into smaller spaces. She is wondering whether staff would take as a direction, and I'm open to your guidance on this, a request to review what Planning Committee and City Council need to do to change our requirements for the size of driveways, and what options, if any, is the city looking at to alleviate community parking issues, such as community parking lots or other techniques to reduce residents parking on residential streets.
So fortunately, we have Mr. Alain Miguelis here, who was the chief architect on the bureaucrat side of the Building Better Smarter Suburbs, along with myself and Councillor Blake, Councillor Hubley, Councillor Kadri, and we have that information. We have we can share with her the thought, how we got to where we are, et cetera, et cetera. And now, the pressures that she's identifying are pressures that we know. One of the things that we were successful in doing with BBSS was being able to plant trees, and now we're back to having a problem with that again. So you think that you've got problems with trees, imagine a landscape with no trees. And they're back to that, and we spent 2 years on that, on the trenching with the utilities. So we're back wrestling with that again. But the very principles of why, like it was, honestly, is my idea, like 6 years ago, to come up with, we've got to put a lens on suburban communities, because we haven't spent any time. It was for these reasons that we did. Okay.
So I would suggest perhaps giving Councillor Meehan a call and dropping by to chat
Maybe have a
about some
meeting
of
with
this.
her.
Yeah.
Yeah, because she didn't have the.
We'll do that, Madam Chair.
Rather than her have to read a whole bunch of stuff.
Thanks.
Councillor Blake?
Yeah, thanks. Very much in the same vein as Councillor Gower and the comments from Councillor Meehan through Jeff. Why do we think this is a good idea?
Madam Chair, the number 30% came from the industry itself. The other side of the reality of this number is that that's what's selling in the market. Today in Ottawa, what's selling in the market, and we get the numbers every month by market research firms, is about 30% are singles, and the others are other products. So to the degree that there are people looking for large single-family homes, they amount to about 30%. And the reality for the industry is that if we have a minimum of 45% and they're not selling 45% of singles in a subdivision, they are forced to do an official plan amendment. So we wanted to remove that red tape from the process. It's a minimum, but it doesn't preclude anybody from doing more if that's what the market will bear.
Sure, but it precludes the elected officials or the community that's engaging in the discussion during the process of requiring them to do more, right? I would prefer to have the stick and give them the carrot through negotiation than to simply give them the carrot and need to beg for my supper later. I agree, like the number of townhomes that we're building in some of these neighborhoods, in fairness, is obscene. It's creating huge operational problems for snow clearing. It's creating huge on-street parking issues. It's reducing the opportunity for it's creating these camps basically 3-4 days before releases. I agree, the townhomes move, but they simply recirculate within the market. So yeah, there's a high volume of sales, but it's recirculating. I don't know any builder who hasn't moved all of their singles within the time frame that they've wanted to move them. Not in Orleans. I don't know how it's working in the other neighborhoods. So in Orleans, when Minto released Encore, when Mattamy released Summerside, when Tamarack released Cardinal Creek, and God knows who else released what, the singles were gone inside a week. So I don't buy the argument that they can't move singles, and I know what the operational problems are when you've got that number of towns. Despite what we want, despite what our goals and dreams are, despite Orleans having the highest ridership of OZ Transpo of anywhere, even people living in townhomes have 2 cars. And the more townhomes you build, the lower the price. People like me can buy 1 or 2, and I can rent them out to 6 students, and now there's 6 cars, right? But no, but my point is, we have a giant stick right now with the builders. You want to add more towns to because you can't hit your threshold. Well, what's the extra park you're going to give us? What's the extra parking you're going to give us? What's the extra you're going to give us in exchange for that trade-off? I would prefer to have the stick so I can get the carrot, as opposed to just giving them the carrot and wondering why the thing's not working properly. So I won't support this amendment. I would prefer to keep the higher number and do case by case based off of trade-offs if that's what we need to do. I think that gives the community and us a lot more power, frankly. And if there's anything in the development world right now, is we should be keeping as much of the power as we can. Thank you.
So you're not going to support this? I don't even understand really why it had to come forward. That's what I have a problem with. What drove that? Was that, Jason, was it the industry that drove it?
That discussion started before I came on board, so I couldn't tell you that part.
Okay, because you know what, I'm going to tell you something. Like, Bruce, I'm glad that you're here, because back, your predecessor was never believable. Every time he would come and speak, people that were on the planning committee, and not many of us, maybe Steve, you were, would say, yeah, people don't want to buy singles anymore. And we go, okay, you know what? And that's the dichotomy of this city, right? We have, and like, as we go forward with the official plan, you cannot pigeonhole anything. What happens in a particular part does not happen in any other part. We have a great commonality between Canada, Orleans, Cumberland, Barrhaven, Riverside South, Stittsville. We do, okay? But you have nothing in common with what you guys have, okay? So we get into this all the time, and then there's the whole rural nuance, if you will. And what I like about where we're going is at least there's a recognition of reality of what the industry knows. Sometimes I think in this case, I was told by members of the industry this morning and by staff that it's because it's not fixing it. It's not 30. So if it's not 30 and it can be something else, why are we doing it? Like, why do we have to do it? Mr. Miglis, why do you need us to do this?
Because 45 is too high.
Yeah, but why?
That's what we're hearing from the industry. It's too high. So they'll be back in front of this committee, which has approved OPAs to reduce it to 30 many times before. They'll be back each time again. That's why.
Maybe they'll be back and say 35. Yeah.
I mean, the point is, this came out of the discussions that we were having as part of the OPA 150 settlement, and it was deemed to be the thing to do. So, and we support it.
Mr. Mark, do you need this to happen? I'm asking from a legal perspective, because that is important to know.
No, Madam Chair, this, as with any official plan amendment, this is open to the discretion of the committee. However, I concur with what Mr. Miguel has said. This came out of the discussions with the industry on OPA 150, OPA 180. The reason it wasn't brought forward in the 2 settlement reports that occurred on that is that this policy was not addressed in those amendments and could not be handled by a modification before the tribunal. It required a separate OPA with the standard public consultation process, and that is why it is before you today.
Okay, and so, can you come up here, Jason, please? So I think that we're in a position where... Sure, but I'm just going to ask him one question. So even though it started before you came here?
Yes.
To the best of your knowledge, it's not driven in any way by the industry or a need that they have? And did they agree to this 30 arbitrarily and just say, sure? Or is that actually something that matters?
I can't speak to the exact number, but yes, the industry did support this reduction of the minimums. It might be important to remember this is a minimum number and not, it doesn't preclude a piece of development building more than that.
Which again says, why are we doing it? Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
So do you want to move that? Oh, did you want to say more, Bruce?
I was just going to say that we've already done this for large parts of the expansion areas that were added through OPA 76. The industry came back to us when we did the community design plans for those areas, and the number of 30% is not arbitrary. It's based on plans where they've worked through the layouts for these communities, they've looked at the intensification target that we have for those areas and the density that we're requiring for residential development, and to mix. It's like a puzzle where you've got to put together your singles at 30 or 45%, and you've got to build roads, you've got to provide parks, and from at least 3 of those development plans, they could not make it at 45. What they were proposing came to 30.13 or something like that. So that's the reason why we settled for 30, and we have made those amendments already in 3 areas of the city. When we were dealing with the industry on the appeals, one of the things that they were hanging their hat on in the appeals was getting this standardized across the city. Unfortunately, it was not an appealed matter, and therefore could not be dealt with by the board or the LPAT. So we undertook a staff to bring it forward as a separate amendment, and that's as Mr. Mark had mentioned. So it's not arbitrary. It's not an arbitrary decision.
Councillor Gower?
I actually think we should not refer it to staff. I would encourage committee members, if you're concerned about this, to have a call with Mr. Finley. It's more of a formalization of a number of agreements through OPAs that we've already been involved in. The idea of minimum percentages for singles or towns or apartments is worth a broader discussion, but I think it's out of the context of the report that's before us. If you still have concerns after talking to Mr. Finley between now and council, maybe that's the time to send it back to staff. But I think, well, without boring us all to death with OPA after OPA, I don't think it's worth sending it back, and I think what they've put in front of us is reasonable to formalize discussions that have been happening for a number of years.
And it has the flexibility if needed as well. Okay, so on the item, carried. Dissent by Councillor Blais. Okay, thank you. I think that is it. Is that it, Madam Committee Coordinator? All right, does anybody have any notices of motion? Any inquiries? Any other business? We're 2 meetings away from Christmas, I think. Seriously? Yep, the 28th. And the 28th is a large agenda.
Year 3, actually, because you have a joint meeting on the 9th.
Oh, we got a joint meeting on the official plan with ARAC on the 9th. Sorry. We were this close to victory. 28th, and then we have the joint one, which is really super important, right?
Put it off till March.
What?
The joint meeting.
Yeah, putting it off to, we have a motion that we're following. Yeah, of ARAC and Planning Committee.
All in favor of doing that in March?
No, we're doing it on December the 9th. That's what he's ready for. Okay, March, are you on holidays in March or something?
I think it'll be in March.
Yeah, well, good. Okay, that's it. Adjourned until the 28th. Then we have the 9th, and I guess we have the 13th or the 14th. 12th. Okay. Thank you. Why?
Because I'm flying to AMO that day and I
You have a couple of items.